what we're talking about in real time because he's listening to the live stream. So,
Hello, Kyle.
And I have to.
Tyler,
yes. Hey, Magda.
The audio on the Twitter side is not so great. Like it's a little bit muffled.
Yeah, we're gonna improve the audio here in 1 second. Bear with me.
Yeah. Also in the audience, on Clubhouse, if you're in the audience, the audio is really low, but then up here it's just fine.
You know what I need to do? You know what? To really address this problem optimally, I need to get what's called a Rodecaster Pro. Oh, shoot.
But tell you,
Hold on. I'll be right back. Hold on. Sorry.
Let's hold on for a while.
Cheryl, you keep the party going, Cheryl. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yes. I'll do it. Okay. So I'm not sure whether the people in Twitter space can hear me yet, but I'm not a co-host yet, so there's nothing much I can do. So anyone have any like interesting news to share first?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind updating everyone on the Ukraine situation. Some big developments.
Please go ahead. We'd love to know that.
I know it's not. Oh, hello. Is that what I sound like? Oh God. No, just I know this is tech related, but I think this is important for the implications it has for the tech sphere. Just this morning, basically about 5 hours ago, the Russian ministry signaled that they would begin to draw down troops and troop numbers on the eastern flank of the country. So that's Donbass, where the 100,000 were first being built up from December. That's quite a big development because obviously if that begins to happen, then it's basically a stepping back from potential conflict. And then we've seen the Americans and the British come out and say, along with the Ukrainians, that we want not just words but action. So
I'm going to have to close the Twitter account.
Positively to that, some minor increases, and we had a discussion about that earlier. But also the German Chancellor is meeting in Russia. He just finished his meeting, actually, literally in the past hour or something, with the president of Russia. So that's the latest on Ukraine. But just wanted to share that little update because I think it's quite relevant. But thank you.
I just want to ask you, right? The situation now is, the kind of like the tense situation. Is it really caused by media? Is it caused by media rather than there's really going to be a real thing going on?
Well, we I literally had this question posed to me about 20 minutes ago, but I think the important thing to remember is that the media is inevitably going to have a role to play in anything like this, but it's also depending upon what type of media it is, where in the world it is, the language barrier, because sometimes if it's, say, something like Al Jazeera, they have their English arm, but sometimes there can be that conversion from Arabic into English, and there can be sometimes misconstruements happening in the interpretation. So absolutely, the media has a big role to play. For example, in the British tabloid, as they're called, you've got pieces of toilet paper known as the Daily Mail, the Sun, and others. Which I'm sorry if you read those papers, but I don't think that they help in drawing down or de-escalating an international crisis like this. Some of them and some of the op-eds and things published in them haven't helped to, should we say, they've definitely fanned the flames. And so I think that that's definitely a role. That being said, you've got the Russian propaganda as well, like RT, or formerly known as Russia Today, and a slew of others which don't exactly help from a Russian perspective as well. So the media is definitely a factor. It acts as an intermediary between the general public and what we read in the professional statements or by what is published by the State Department, the Foreign Ministry, whoever. So it's important to always fact check and read round and try and read news articles or sources which are as neutral as possible. But that's more of my opinion than necessarily fact.
Peter, do you have any speculation as to why the Russians at this point in time decided to kind of withdraw some of their troops?
So that's a very important point here. Thanks for that question. But there is no physical withdrawal yet. The Russians have signaled they're going to, but that's very different to actively doing it yet. As I say, the working week for the British or the Americans has only just begun. So we're going to have to see what happens later on as the day goes on. But someone posed the question to me earlier, like, do you think because could this be a ploy by the Russians to simply catch the West off guard and then they're actually going to launch an attack? I highly doubt it, mainly because the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, who's a very respected diplomat, also was speaking with Putin today and said, which I find quite entertaining. He was like, "Come on, mate. We need to continue to engage diplomatically." Of which Putin was quoted as simply just replying one word, "Fine," sort of like a grumpy teenager. I do genuinely think that this could be a positive step, because both the Russians and the Brits and Americans yesterday said, they're hopeful for diplomatic solutions, but it's very early days. So remain cautious on this. And we've heard the NATO Secretary General say, we will wait to see physical as this true sign that Russia wants to engage. But as I say, because you're hearing, I would find it very, very bad if you had the military going against the foreign ministry of the Russians, saying one thing and then doing another. So I like to believe this could be the start of some improvements, but again, it's hard to tell at this stage. But sorry, I'm not trying to take away from the tech discussion.
Thank you, Peter. Anybody else have any comments regarding this news that Peter shared? Okay, if not, anyone else have a next topic to share before we?
Yeah, Cheryl, there's a couple of big tech stories, actual tech stories.
Yeah.
So like Cisco's doing a $20 billion acquisition. They haven't announced it. It was reported in the paper. So they're buying a company called Splunk. I tweeted all of this out yesterday, so it should be in your tech news thing. So Splunk is like a software company, machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one. Intel is going to be doing a $6 billion acquisition of an Israeli semiconductor company. There was a couple of stories on Apple. I'm trying to remember what they are. One of them I know is that based on some filings Apple did in Europe, it looks like there's going to be some new Mac machines coming out. Not just everyone's expecting a new iPhone and a new iPad, but apparently there might be 3 new Mac computers coming out. And that's another story I tweeted out. And there's another Apple story that right now I'm not remembering. And then there's a story on Tesla. Hold on a second, and I'll tell you what that is. Because I have to go look at it. It's it's all stuff I tweeted out to you. So that's the Intel story. That's the Cisco story. I'm just looking at my own stuff.
The one that you mentioned from Intel is actually the third news from the top.
Oh,
today.
is it?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There's a story on Apple making moves to combat labor shortages, and this was a big one. Texas, the state of Texas in the United States, which is I think our second biggest state, is suing Meta or Facebook over facial recognition practices, and they're suing them for like over like 100 billion, like some ridiculous number, because in the United States, every state has its own privacy laws. The privacy laws are actually state laws, not federal laws. So and I should point out the Attorney General of Texas, I think, is running for governor. So there's a lot of politics involved in this. So those are my top tech stories. But I just wanted to mention that there were actually tech stories, because yesterday we spent so much time on Ukraine, and I go into Piotr's room. I think if you want to learn about Ukraine, go to Piotr's room. But I don't like to the exclusion of like every tech story. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm done.
I found the Texas sues Meta over Facebook facial recognition practice from the Wall Street Journal, which is Silas' favorite article. So have you read this? You want to go through some details on that?
Which one are we talking about?
Texas sue Meta.
Yeah, I could read it. Hold on, let me bring it up. Yeah, do you have a paywall issue on it or something?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's a paywall.
There's
Well,
a paywall.
There is?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
look for another one.
no, it's okay. I'll read it. I just gotta find it again.
So Ben, why
Uh,
they think it's illegal?
Hold on a second. This is the story, so I don't know why I'm not getting it. Okay, so Meta, which has ended practices at issue, says the claims are without merit. Of course, they're going to say that. Um, it said it stopped using facial recognition system, citing public concern of the technology. The Texas AG filed a suit against, Facebook, charging that the social media giant's longstanding and now discontinued use of facial recognition technology violated the state privacy laws. Blah blah blah. It was filed, and okay, it tells you when it was filed. He's asking for the AG is asking for civil penalties in the hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, that's an incredible number, hundreds of billions. Okay, and I mean, this, like I said, I think a lot of it's political because he's running for governor. Um, in a statement, or he's running for re-election, but either way, he's running. I think he's running for governor.
This is the same
In,
guy
in,
who banned abortion, right?
he enforces it. He doesn't ban it on himself. The legislature does. Uh, in a statement, Mr. Paxton said the company's capture of facial geometry in photographs that users uploaded from 2010 to late last year resulted in tens of millions of violations of Texas law. Facebook has been secretly harvesting Texans' most personal information, photos, and videos for its own corporate profit. Texas law has prohibited such harvesting without informed consent for over 20 years. While ordinary Texans have been using Facebook to innocently share photos of loved ones with friends and family, we now know that Facebook has been brazenly ignoring Texas law for the last decade. In a statement, Meta said claims against Facebook are without merit and we will defend ourselves, blah, blah, blah. Meta said that before it decided to shut down its facial recognition system, users were always provided with notice and an opportunity to consent when they used those services. Um, Facebook previously settled another lawsuit over facial recognition practices for about $650 million. That class action suit filed in 2015 was brought under Illinois' biometric privacy law, which is similar in some respects to the Texas law. That's interesting because I always knew about the Illinois law because Illinois has a privacy law that most other states don't have. So if Texas has a similar one, that's pretty interesting. Um, both laws require individual consent before their biometric identifiers can be captured. Not every state has a law like that. Um, in the class action case, Facebook lawyers said that the Illinois law didn't apply to the method for identifying users in photos. The company also said it had given users the ability to opt out of the feature. They tried to dismiss the class action, were unsuccessful. This is out in Illinois that they ended up paying, and the company settled the case in 2020. And then it goes. It's a long article. I don't know if you want me to read the whole thing. It talks about how the technology works, and I mean, I'm not sure if it's worth reading the whole article. So
I think should be
um,
okay. Thank you, Ken. But the thing is,
yeah.
did Texas also sue Clearview?
Is what
Did Texas sue Clearview as well?
Texas is suing Facebook right now.
Yeah, but did they sue Clearview for the facial recognition?
I don't know.
Because they are used everywhere, right, by law enforcement in US, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Well, by
Okay,
the way,
great.
if it's being used by law enforcement, if Texas is doing it on their own, they're probably not going to file a suit. But anyway.
Then there's double standard, no?
Yeah.
Great. Anybody have any comment on this?
I just wanted to say that I came from the Twitter Spaces and it's closed.
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
close, I
know.
know. Yeah,
Oh,
because
right.
yeah, I wasn't
They
make the
kind of
host.
had
I
some
think.
tech issues.
Yeah, I know. I know. I realized that, so that's why it's closed automatically. But we just wait for him to come back. But before that, anyone have any hot article to want to share before we jump onto the headlines?
Do you want to talk about the Intel one because that's big? It's the biggest, not Intel, the Cisco. Because I mean, I know you want to talk about Intel when he comes back, but
Yeah, we can
Cisco
talk about Cisco
is
now.
yeah, because Cisco is really big because it's the biggest acquisition they've ever done in their
Wow.
history. Okay,
Yeah.
so let me bring that one up if I can find that one. Hold on again.
Yeah. I'll pin it on top.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is I gotta find.
Cisco.
Yeah, this
What's the
is not
company
that.
name again that they acquire?
Splunk, and they haven't bought it yet. It's a rumor that they're going to buy it, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, Splunk. Yes.
it's probably a really good rumor because
Yes.
Cisco was rumored they wanted to buy another similar company, I think, and they didn't, but because they're basically an equipment company. They make routers, as people know, and so this is a
Yes.
software company. So they're trying to diversify. So here's the story. So Splunk stock surged 7.6% in pre-market trading Monday. So that's yesterday here in the United States. And you can just tell from my voice, it's still early in the morning on the West Coast where Cisco
Good
and I
morning.
are. Okay, yeah. On report, I had alarms going off. Yeah. Has offered to buy a software maker for more than $20 billion. At the close on Friday, Splunk was valued at roughly $18 billion. The bid was made recently, but the companies aren't currently in active talks. The Wall Street Journal said Splunk makes software computer com, used by companies, information technology, and security operations to monitor and analyze data. I mean, so my understanding is a company that analyzes like machine generated data. Cisco has traditionally derived the bulk of its revenue from selling routers, switches, and security services, but now is trying to build a suite of applications to grow its software business. Sales of its conferencing platform WebEx got a boost from the pandemic, competing with the likes of Microsoft's Teams and Zoom to grab a share of the booming market. At $15 billion, sales of software for the year ended July 31st account for over 30% of total revenue. Subscription revenue rose 15% on the year. Splunk has been, this is the more interesting thing. Splunk has been looking for a CEO ever since Doug Merritt quit in November after several quarters of disappointing results. He was at the helm for some 6 years, and the chair, which probably was the non executive chairman, Graham Smith, is currently the interim CEO. So it's pretty interesting that the CEO leaves maybe just 2 months before the company gets acquired, because that usually doesn't happen because they usually know what's going on. And when the company gets acquired, they get a big, golden parachute. So it's pretty interesting that he left
Maybe that's a
two
premature.
months ago.
Well, or they found out
But just
something that made it necessary for the company to
Yes.
be
Yeah,
acquired.
something. You're
But
right. And
Cisco's been stagnant for such a long time, Ken, that it's
well,
about time that it did something.
Yeah,
well,
before
yeah,
they
I
because
mean,
become
just to let y'all
dino
know,
babies.
Splunk is it's not just data monitoring data. It actually monitors networks very much like SolarWinds. Actually uses it's a network monitoring tool, and it reads logs that come from Windows, Linux, and different appliances to make sure there's nothing happening on your network. And it actually does alerting and notifications and does all this reporting. So all the data that comes from the different devices, applications, databases, all those types of relationships, it reads that stuff and feeds it back and monitors the system at the same time. So it makes sense that Cisco would buy something like that, because the only other product out there, I mean, there's a few other ones with SolarWinds.
Yeah, but that's great because it means that Cisco will now have a full solution.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, Cisco's essentially trying to do this to try and catch up to where Palo is. So my assumption would be that their next move would probably be like buy an XDR platform or an MDR type company. Because I guarantee you Microsoft's on that approach since they have their Sentinel platform which does something similar to it, and it's been gaining a lot of traction. This is Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, anyone have any other comment regarding this article? If not, anyone have any other news to share before I pin the Intel one on top?
Yeah, wait, Tom, what's XDR and MDR?
So MDR is managed detection and response. So basically, all that log data that Splunk collects is there to define types of attacks that are coming in. Is what it'll define the attacks that are coming in, the machine problems, anything you could do with big data analytics from all the different devices on your network. So the next thing is, once you have the data, how do you correlate that stuff to make an actionable case of what's going on? So that, and then XDR is just like the buzzword of like MDR and everything else. So the big players in that space, the two that you've seen working a lot together, are like Microsoft and Mandiant would be one. Palo Alto has their own, which they've bought a few different companies for that. And then the back end behind it is going to be some type of machine learning to try and detect those types of attacks coming in. So the 1849 number is the big number to beat. That's the fastest attack by the Russians from Fancy Bear. And that's the benchmark. And what happened was a couple of months ago, well, it's actually about a year ago now, Splunk has started to lose traction because of the cost. So a lot of companies have started looking at another company called Devo. Hope that helps, Jen.
Yeah, right now the only people that really use it are government entities, for whatnot, and a lot of the contractors or the consultants that work with the government. They use it because it's mostly it's mandated within the contracts that they have to use it.
Wait, using MDR or using Splunk?
Splunk, because you have to feed that data back to because it's in some of the SLA documents and other security documents that we have to respond within a certain amount of time with a certain file type on a certain tunnel to get that information back as they request it. So if they, it's written in a lot of the contracts sometimes.
Do they specifically require Splunk, the company?
Yeah, the one that I'm working on right now, it is.
Interesting. And because when Splunk started, when they were big data analytics, they were using it for. I mean, I'm glad to see that it's a slight expansion into the security space, but it was performance. So you'd see a lot of them like predictive performance. So when your airlines are going to need upgrades and updates, or when they might be down, or any other, as you said, networks. It was for performance monitoring versus security monitoring. But I mean, I see that they're related, and it's it's a good expansion for them.
Yeah, you can buy. Yeah, you can buy the. I mean, Splunk is expensive once you get into like the different features or functionality that you need, and they actually charge you by how much data that is consumed. So if you have a certain, it depends on what your backups are, because it also does backup and archiving. And if you're backing up 365, 24/7, that gets kind of costly depending on how much data is being collected by Splunk.
Yeah, it also collects a lot of noise, Jen. So think of everything you do on your computer to everything that's done on the network, and then what's the cause and effect of each thing. So if you download something, it's literally like if you click on a link, it will keep track of the whole process of everything that happened on your computer, watch how it spread. But now it's just this massive amount of data that people and machine learning and everything else have to correlate, put together. It's used for security, performance, everything that collects logs. I know a lot of people that do some phenomenal dashboarding from it as well. Like when people want that single pane of glass view of everything that's going on. And their sales approaches, they'll target it one line of business with one play, another line of business with another play, and just get these companies so deeply embedded, it's kind of hard to rip out. And the way they did it was they started off with a freemium model, which collected about 500 meg of logs a day.
Yeah, and the way you're describing it, Tom, the different lines of business and the pricing with all that noise and all that pricing, so that companies can't consolidate and bring that bulk pricing down, and also all the noise. Who sits on top of them and makes those? One of my clients is a company that sits on top of those monitoring tools and provides the dashboard and reduces the noise. I mean, that's their product is getting to the actual meeting, relevant alerts. So, and they do sit. Who are the other dashboards that sit on top of that, or companies that sit on top of that?
I mean, there's no other companies that really sit on top of it. It actually, you can integrate other things into it. Like right now, I have a project I have a big migration project, and I'm integrating the Splunk with the Atlassian ecosystem. But really, if you have a good ISM team and you get somebody that's really good at Linux, and you just have a good network team, the fact that he's I think it was Tom was talking about that noise, you'll be able to delineate it or delimit out the data, so you'll have what you really need.
Okay.
So I hope that helps. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah,
Hope that
Elle, is that
helps.
custom to each company when they do that? I know a lot of companies, like that's the big issue around AI is people are like, oh, I want to buy this AI solution. And it's like, well, it's got to be customized to your industry. Like not any, you have to
It
design
comes
it.
with custom well, it does come with
Yeah.
dashboards, like template dashboards, but I'm actually using Power BI because we have other stuff that we have to pull out of there. So if you have somebody that's good with data like Power BI, right now I'm the Power BI person, even though I'm not proficient at it. I have things that, it just pulls everything from Splunk and does all this fancy stuff for them to tell the story that they want. So that's really
Okay.
it.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Ellen, Jennifer. So anyone want to bring up another hot news? When you just joined the stage, anything from India before we move on to the top headlines?
On the left side.
Nope. How about Messi? I brought you up late. Sorry, Messi.
I just got got in, and I'm also driving. So yeah,
Oh,
no.
okay. Yeah, you drive carefully. Vinay,
Yeah,
you.
but what's happening? I
Oh, no, no,
actually.
no. I think Tyler just has some technical issue. He'll be back with us very soon. Vinay, you have something to share from India? Okay, great. So I've already pinned the Intel article on top. It is actually the third headline of today. Since Ken has already mentioned it, so maybe I'll just briefly read through it. I'm reading the TechCrunch version because I can't open the Bloomberg one. So Intel to acquire Tower Semiconductor for $5.4 billion to build on the custom foundry strategy. As you know, Intel's strength is actually on IDM, integrated device manufacturing, but they definitely have to move on to the foundry business because everyone knows that right now semiconductor chips manufacturing become a national security thing, so they definitely have to do it onshore. So when the article reads, when Intel CEO announced the company's foundry strategy last March, he dubbed it IDM 2.0. He called it IDM 2.0. So at that time, the company announced the first part of the approach with a $20 billion investment to build 2 new fabs in Arizona. And the company also announced plans to become a provider of foundry services for the other chip makers. So today, the company is building on that idea with the announcement that it plans to acquire Tower Semiconductor. To be honest, it is the first time I heard it, although I used to be from the industry, a provider of custom foundry services for $5.4 billion. The CEO sees the move as a perfect fit for the company's vision. So Tower Specialty Technology found portfolio geographic reach, deep customer relationships and services. The first operations will help scale Intel's foundry services and advance their goal of becoming a major provider of foundry capacity in the world. I'm not sure exactly what is the technology they have now. Anyone have any idea?
Have to split.
But whatever it is, I think TSMC is still having the leading edge technology, so which is something that is very hard to beat. So there's a lot of catch up to be done. Anyone have any comments on this before we move on to the next one? By the way, is Tyler back? You're muted. Okay, he's not. Okay, so if there's no comment on this, shall we move on to the next one? Sorry, I need to do many things at the same time, so it could be a bit slow. So actually today's top headline is this one. I'm going to tweet it on top. It's regarding Android. Okay.
No, he cannot see nothing. I understand, yeah. You need to tell him not drink no more, you know?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. I thought I'm having a monologue, like talking to myself. Okay, anyhow. So this is about Android 13 developer preview. I'm not okay. This one, sorry, there's a paywall. Okay, exclusive. Pixel will be able to stream Android apps to your Chromebook or PC. Here's how it works. Okay, there's a video. So Google has been preparing a way to stream apps and notification from your Pixel phone. Anyone using Pixel here? Nope. Okay, to your Chromebook or PC. So it has enabled this feature to provide an exclusive first look at it. Okay, so anyhow, I've already pinned it on top. So there's a video. So if you want to take a look at it, please do. Let me quickly glance through to see whether there's any okay, so at CES 2022, Google announced that later this year, you will be able to access any chat app on your phone directly from your Chromebook without needing to install them again. So last week, Google publicly released the first Android 13 developer preview built for Pixel phones. And in it, there are 2 cross-device service apps. Each one appears to be dedicated to connecting your Pixel to other devices. Okay, so if you want to do a deep dive on that, please do so. So, Vinay, are you there? Because the next article is on India. Let me pin it on top. Vinay, you're there, but your microphone seems to be very far away from your voice is very far away. Okay, so I'll read this, but Vinay, can you please get ready so that we can hear your voice afterwards?
Sure, I'm here.
Oh, you're here now? Okay, do you know about this C's 16 billion oh no, sorry, I'm on Bloomberg and it's giving me the paywall now, so I need to go back to look for another article. Okay, so oh, this one is another article. How come is it? Okay, this is interesting. This is about Chinese apps. Sorry, I'm not good in doing this multi.
Is the article about the fact that India banned another 54 Chinese apps? Is
Oh,
that
yes.
the one?
Yes. Are you aware about this article?
Yeah. So,
can you go quick for us?
Yeah, so the Indian government banned. So some of you may know that about a year ago, India banned TikTok and a whole bunch of other apps.
Yes.
And
that produced many unicorns after that.
Yes, exactly, and many Indian startups with social media. And just yesterday, India banned another 54 apps, mostly gaming apps, citing that they're a threat to national security because some of these all within China, but where they found, I think one of the apps was, what's the technical word for it? But literally, once you download the app, it was screening the entire phone for data.
Spyware.
Right? Spyware, thank you. I went blank on the word. So they banned another 54 more apps, mostly in the gaming space.
Oh, okay.
So it was combing for data. It was combing around the phone for data.
Yeah,
Did it
exactly.
say what data it was combing for?
Mostly financial data. Interesting enough, passwords, bank data, banking passwords, etc.
So did you take a closer look at this 53 apps, and do you think that will actually? Okay, that means is there existing apps, so-called company in India that's doing this, and do you foresee because of this 53 new bans, there will be very soon more related unicorns coming out from India?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot more gaming companies. There already are, and what's interesting is Hong Kong based companies that have apps are okay. Mainland China based companies are the issue. So there's still some Hong Kong based apps that are still running. So who knows? Maybe
can they just change their kind of like move the headquarters to Hong Kong and just continue to do business that way?
Yeah, it could be. I think some of them will have to find a workaround. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So otherwise, is there any other India related news that you also want to share before I move on to the next one? which is
No, not India. I'll come back later. But there was another interesting one on Starlink. I don't know if you guys saw whether you talked about it. About 9 hours ago, Elon Musk tweeted that he's got 250,000 users for Starlink. I was actually a bit
okay.
surprised that it's so low. It's only 250,000 all around the world, right? So
Is it because I think the base, what do you call that? The base station, the router, it costs quite a bit of money, right? Is it $1,000 or something?
yeah, for all the hype, I mean, if you're only
Yeah.
talking about 250,000 in 58 countries, that's not a lot.
Right. Okay. I've pinned on top another one is also from Elon Musk, Neuralink though. Let me take a look at it. I'm not sure whether y'all can see. This one is from Independent UK. Neuralink.
But before we do,
Okay, so Elon Musk Neuralink admits to killing 8 animals during brain chip test. Oh no. I thought there is a movement for against animal testing. Okay, so these monkeys are
up to the generator, right?
okay, sorry. I opened an article which has a paywall again.
Now up, right?
Oh no, now I can appreciate how hard work it is to be Tyler.
Go.
And I really miss him now. Tyler, are you back?
It's on. I know. This is looking good.
Okay, he's not. Somebody help me. Can help me, please?
Okay, Cheryl, what do you need? I can help you.
Oh, do you have an article to share? Oh, I love you, Aaron.
Okay, I just retweeted an article coming out of India. Sorry, Vinay. It's about the solar panel farms in small villages and the jobs that were promised to these farmers in return of their land. And looks like the jobs that are being offered are not good paying jobs. And I tried to retweet it. I don't know if you received it or not.
Mm-hmm. Can you just give us a brief overview of that? I
Okay.
will try to get it now. Yeah.
There were a couple of villages where the solar farms were constructed. The landowners were the farmers, and they were promised that they would have jobs available once the solar farms were established. So far, looks like the jobs that were given to the farmers are not high-paying jobs, and it looks even bleaker for the girls and females who were promised the jobs. As India tried to replace coal as the source of energy with the solar farming and taking this initiative to adopt more green energy. But the situation for the farmers who gave up their land doesn't look very good, according to this news.
Oh, that's
Okay, I've got something to share. This is Sam.
yes. Please go ahead, Sam. Thank you.
Well, I don't know if somebody shared this, but Opera browser now allows you to browse the internet using emojis. So basically, you can, instead of like the www something, you can put like the smiley face emoji or or something else, and you'd be able to browse to that whoever site that has that information. A lot of celebrities are already registering their own little emojis. So whenever this hits the major browsers like Chrome or anything else, they'll be able to reserve their sites. One of the interesting things is that the most expensive emoji that was sold was a single character emoji of the gold key. It was sold for $425,000 in mid 2021. You'll find a bunch of celebrities like Kesha, Lil Wayne, and the iTunes. If you're listening to Questlove, Supreme, you'll be able to also use that in the browser. Nifty feature. I don't know if anybody's going to use it. I think it's called Yats instead of regular websites or URLs. They're called Yats, Y-A-T. So if you're into that kind of thing and want to reserve your own Yat, just head over to, I think it's y.at, and you'll be able to reserve your own emoji. Go to your
Oh,
website.
is that a JPG file or is it an NFT?
It is. Oh, actually, you can also. They are NFTs as well. So these Yats, you can. They can be resold and as NFTs if you so would like to do that in the future. But the only browser that supports this for now is the Opera browser, if anybody
Oh.
uses that.
Oh yeah, I think Opera also recently enabled the crypto payment or something like that, right?
Yes.
Okay, makes sense.
One,
Hi, Nicholas.
one other, hey, good morning. I see
Morning.
you're on your own.
I'm so
I
glad to
wanted
see
to.
you.
I was going to give you feedback on two of your subjects, Elon's Starlink. So I think first of all, I think whoever said it was right in noting that it is expensive to get Starlink, and for most people, of course, they've got an alternate. If you live in an urban area, you have an alternative that's going to be cheaper than I remember it was being like $500, but I think it may be different places. So number one is it's really useful for people who are underserved by current broadband or current connectivity. So it is likely to be a smaller subset of people that will move first, people who really want better internet. The second thing is with Neuralink, I really find this almost like the robot issue for Elon. He's constantly, like a magician trying to, show you what's going on over here to distract you from the fact that, the full self-driving is still 6-7 years away. The quality is, not great on those cars, etc. And I think it frustrates some of the Tesla shareholders to watch him divert and split his great talents on these things. And Neuralink, I spoke to a number of doctor friends of mine who are involved in that, and they were like, this really is nothing particularly new. And the brain interface with computers is really happening through the mobile phone anyway, because the mobile phone is logging so much of what you're doing. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't come a time that you'll have a brain interface, but I wouldn't be implanting a chip in myself anytime soon. And I think the next step logically is going to be the Apple glasses, which will be much more of a brain interface because they can see where you're looking. And of course, gaze is extremely important in terms of relevance. The other thing, in terms of what someone said about Opera and browsers, was just to say that you would need to have that resolvable at the DNS in order to have it to interoperable on the regular web. But you should be aware that in terms of identities, you can use emojis as identities on the Verus system. If you do want to buy an emoji identity, like a smiling face or a thumbs up, you can do that.
Thank you, Nicholas. Okay,
Can I add one more
yes,
story?
go
If
ahead.
you, all right. So
Oh, sorry.
Instagram has been
Uh,
really notorious on the
sorry,
way that.
Summer, I have a
Oh,
question.
go ahead.
Yes, ladies first.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points on Neuralink, Nicholas. Do you think that the technology is similar in Google Glasses as in Neuralink? If you compare it, how Neuralink can be controlled by a patient's thoughts, perhaps a paraplegic patient, with the same kind of capability be provided with those glasses?
I think that, of course, going and trying to have a brain computer interface is far more complex, and therefore I think the likelihood of Musk succeeding in any reasonable time to show any real lift. But yes, there are examples of people who currently have implants in order to help them navigate, etc. But again, I think that that's literally to do with eye tracking or to do with some other motor skill that you're interfacing rather than the brain in terms of consciousness. So I think it's different in terms of really being helpful and useful and understanding what you're thinking versus doing something mechanical, which a connection has been lost. I'm particularly thinking about a friend of mine who is a paraplegic who has been using one of those keyboards for a very long time. So I think there's a difference, a nuanced difference there.
Yeah, I wanted to add, if I may, so the real pioneer and postdocs that came out of his lab made basically Neuralink is Miguel Nicolelis, and so he did all these experiments that they showed with monkeys like years before the exact same experiments. And Miguel Nicolelis himself has now his own institute. He was at Duke University before. And he actually asked people that have, paralyzed, that are paralyzed for many years, what they would like. And people answered him, the last thing I want is another operation that is very risky because their homeostasis and their health is quite fragile. Being paralyzed doesn't just mean you cannot move your limbs. It means also your immune system and your homeostasis is not working well. You get infections easily and so on. So people said the last thing they want is like brain surgery, which would be very risky. So he started doing recording with more channels, EEGs, and built the exoskeleton to make people walk again. And he's been very successful. And the very surprising thing was that not just they could basically, with their thoughts, move the exoskeleton with EEGs, which is non-invasive. They could also, after a while, regain sensation and a little bit of movement back in their real limbs, which was a quite success story, and he's keeping working on it. So he says that you don't need necessarily an implant for most cases, because nowadays with machine learning and signal to noise ratio control, you can get most of it with EEG.
With a cap-like thing. Yeah, I've read like a couple of researches on that, and it's quite interesting that you really don't need the surgery part. Maybe it's nice to have that kind of flair. Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Hey,
Just now
hey,
somebody wants.
Katarina, is EEG the same thing as EMG? Because I know that Facebook, or Meta in this case, was working on that technology in order to put a device on a user where they're able to somehow identify their intent and then elect some form of action according to that intent by somehow identifying the electricity within their, I guess, veins or something like that. I'm not really too sure about how that works, but is it the same thing?
So when the EEG, they record basically the brain waves in the skull. The other one records neural activity in the periphery, so in the fingers and the arms, wherever. And there's a lot of interesting research, and it 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 actually started with that research, the frog leg and stuff like that, and also in humans, because it's way easier to access. And then it kind of stopped because scientists want to do always the most fancy things to get the best grants. But it's coming back, and it's very interesting research that is resurfacing, and we can do a lot by just reading out neural activity throughout the body instead of um, reaching the more deeper, more complicated regions in the brain. Yeah.
So, JT, to clarify, EEG stands for electroencephalogram, that records the electrical signaling that passes through the neurons with each action potential, and EMG stands for myoencephalogram, and that records the activity of myocytes, which are the muscular fibers. So there's a huge difference between muscular activity and neuronal cell electrical signaling.
It's not hot. It worked good.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, you can combine that. What people are doing, they combine it with also the neural activity, from the periphery, and it's giving quite good data. And the idea is that you can, once you're good at reading it out, the complicated thing there is that individual differences are quite significant. Like you cannot generalize as well. The between the signal of between people versus if they are nervous or not, let's say, or anxious or not. So you have to do recordings to understand individual activity from each person, and based on that, hopefully give a feedback pulse that maybe calms you down faster, or or any of this, like puts you in a meditative state or focused state. So yeah, that's the problem there, that the individual differences are bigger than the group differences between, let's say, being stressed and excited, let's say, for example.
Very good.
Thank you.
I'm back.
Oh,
Whoa.
welcome back. Oh,
Oh,
I
He's
missed you
back.
so much, Tyler.
whoa. Cheryl, easy.
What happened?
Um, just had,
Damn, was it that bad?
yeah. Okay, so I'm back, and the Twitter space is open, and good to be back. And where did I leave off? How many stories did you cover?
Quite a few
Covered a
already.
few.
Did you do this?
Next,
Which
the,
one? I
the, the next one I have pinned on top is the next door wants you to connect with neighbors you may know.
Wasn't that always their plan?
hang on, Cheryl. So did you do the top story Android 13 developer preview?
Yes.
Okay, and did you do number 2 after India banned?
Yes, Vinay. Yes.
And then Intel plans to acquire an Israeli chip startup.
Yes.
And then Vice.
Tower.
Yes, you did that one.
Yeah, we talked about that one.
Yes, we did. But we didn't talk about the board ape though. Not yet. I skipped that one first.
Okay, a look at the self-righteous anger in the Web3 community over the identification of the founders of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. Who cares? Next one, Samsung.
Yeah, that's what.
Right, Samsung has.
That was brilliant.
Okay, Samsung. Cheryl, you can stop laughing for a second. Samsung has adopted Google Messages. Did you cover that?
No.
Not yet.
Okay,
It's great news. It's great news, though.
It is great news. So here it is. Samsung has adopted Google Messages as its default messaging app in the United States, starting with Galaxy S22 series, which itself was announced recently. So what's going on, I think most people aren't yet aware of what's happening, is Google is trying to unify everybody around, what is it, RTC or whatever the protocol, RCS, which is they're trying to do for chat what email is. Email's an open protocol that all apps can share, and they do. And that's why your email from Apple works seamlessly with your email from Google or from Microsoft or from Amazon, or it doesn't matter. The whole world can tap into it. Anyone can tap into that protocol. Well, wouldn't that be great if all chat apps could do that too? And then WhatsApp could chat with WeChat, could chat with Facebook Messenger and Apple iMessage and all of it. What if those all magically work together? Wouldn't that be lovely? And it should. And it looks like we're making progress in that direction. However, somebody did recently ask WhatsApp, because they are the 800-pound gorilla in that space. They have more chat users than anybody in the West. And WhatsApp said they would not be joining this. And that's a very unfortunate move, but however, everybody else might still unify without them. And in doing so, that could become a big problem for WhatsApp. And then WhatsApp might kind of be forced to shift potentially.
No.
Well,
let me tell you why. WhatsApp is a closed system for messaging. Yes. So they don't have to interact with the regular text messaging. But others do.
Well, they would have to if they want to continue to have users.
Right.
No, Tyler. They are.
What about Apple? Apple doesn't integrate either.
No, but Apple is saying that
That's right.
It's likely they are going to integrate in this.
And Signal does not either.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because of the
So
privacy
All,
issues, so people
all
value privacy.
it does. They can still have privacy
And
on.
Telegram.
Wait,
They can
let
have
Tyler
privacy.
finish, y'all.
They can have their privacy on their end of their apps and still say we're protecting you as our users. We offer. There's still a reason to use Proton Mail separate from Gmail. Proton Mail as an app offers more privacy than Gmail does. Telegram and Signal will continue to offer more privacy than iMessage. It's very simple concept. So
Yeah.
they can all share in this. The difference is, well, imagine an app, imagine email was balkanized the same way that messages are, and imagine the biggest email provider. Let's in this metaphor, this is of course WhatsApp. WhatsApp holds out and says, no, we're going to hang on to our traditional protocol and not join this unified open email protocol that you all are using. We're going to keep with our special kind of Zmail protocol, and the rest of the world unifies on email, and they've got Zmail. Now all of a sudden, you'll see the shift. They will start to feel a lot of pressure because their users might vote with their feet and stop using WhatsApp, and then true, they don't have to switch. They can die. They have that. That's totally their choice if they want to die and fall into the dustbin of history like Betamax tapes and laser discs and all that shit. So yeah, of course they have the right to do that. Of course they don't have to innovate and stay with the rest of the world. They should just consider doing that if they want to stay relevant. So I believe that they will feel that pressure eventually.
How about
Maybe
line
they
and
will,
WeChat?
but the thing is, what you're talking about is interoperability between SMS and WhatsApp protocol, which is not happening right now. So there is no way to send from
No.
WhatsApp to your direct.
Yeah, this protocol is not SMS or whatever WhatsApp's.
I know RCS is a derivative of SMS. It's
exactly
a cousin.
Right. Exactly right. So, but Samsung making it its default is a nice. That's not small. That's not a small move in this. And
It's wonderful.
It's great, yeah. But it adds momentum, and it gives all the other handset manufacturers, because Samsung's still one of the top 2 or 3. It puts pressure on a lot of the other apps to follow, and if they follow, then might push Apple to follow, and that might push, it's a dominoes game, a snowball like game, So anyway,
the Google Messenger is already available for any Android. You can already install it.
I know.
And the cool thing about it is that you can also do it from your desktop. So from the desktop, you can use the Messenger for Google, and that is a fantastic thing. Yeah.
By the way, thank you for saying that, because you've just highlighted yet the other amazing reason to adopt this unified protocol is because it can work in both your native. Any app could decide we're going to play friendly with this protocol. So, for example, just like email works in your desktop or in your laptop or in your phone or whatever, and email works, by the way, inside of web pages. You can have a little box on your web page that says, "Hey, type in a message and hit send," and it sends it as an email using the email protocol. Well, guess what? They could change that on your website. You could have a little form, and when they click the send button, it sends it as this new open chat protocol. So now imagine every website you ever go to is also playing friendly with this chat protocol, and all your apps and all of your websites are all likely to embrace this eventually. That's a very compelling prospect for web.
I have a question. So is this only for the phone messengers like Apple and the one that Google has, or is it for like all of it, like Kakao,
all of it?
Line? The reason why I asked that is because I know Korea, a lot of their stuff, they're very big on identity and access management, and you have to use your social for a lot of stuff. Because I have a Kakao account, but it took me forever to get it, to like do all these little things to just get access to it. So do you think certain countries would adopt this?
It's a protocol like SMS. So a lot of carriers, it's carrier based. It's not about the country.
Okay.
So most carriers have it already. and other carriers are also jumping on this bandwagon. They do want to provide this to their customers because rich communication services is really cool because you can send all sort of items and you can send like emojis back and all sorts of really cool things.
Oh
And
yeah, I
as you said,
agree. I
yeah,
most definitely
yeah,
agree. I just know there's some countries are a bit more
the,
strict.
yeah, it's evolution of SMS.
Yep. Okay, so that's what's interesting about that story. Samsung's going to do it. Now, what's interesting, again, the subtle nuance of this is that Samsung is making this the default messenger app in the phone, built in as the kind of like the iMessage of Apple. The default messaging is going to be that. That's great. So the next story, did you cover the animal rights one, Cheryl, with Neuralink?
Yes, monkey, right?
Yeah,
We had a little discussion.
yeah. Okay. Next, Microsoft tells employees it will fully reopen. Did you cover that?
Not yet. No, not yet.
There
Not
we go.
yet.
Microsoft, and is that where you left off, right there?
I didn't see the Microsoft one, so I was about to go to the next door, but you can continue with the Microsoft first.
Okay. Microsoft tells employees it will fully reopen its facilities in Washington. That's the global headquarters. Starting February 28th. That's in about a week and a half, citing high rates of COVID-19 vaccination in that area. So they feel confident that because everyone's vaccinated, that things will be hunky-dory there back at Microsoft
Here
campus.
comes the traffic, Tyler.
Yeah.
I live there.
Yeah. You have a thought to share?
Will they have a mask mandate is the question.
Right. Okay. Next big topic is Softbank. Did you cover that one?
No.
Okay. Financial Times. How Softbank's costly bet on IoT at the ARM backfired and distracted the company from a much bigger data center market. UK chip designer ARM changes strategy ahead of planned float with renewed focus on lucrative server market as Masayoshi-san tried to persuade investors and that's not a good fit for us. Next one's from Bloomberg. They say they have sources that Didi, the Uber of China, plans to cut 20% of jobs before the Hong Kong IPO. Sources say Didi Finance, autonomous driving, and some other units will be less impacted. Okay. Chinese ride-hailing giant Didi plans to reduce its overall headcount by as much as 20% as the troubled tech firm pushes ahead with its Hong Kong IPO. Really interesting to see. And we're now approaching the later stages of that drama. Those who have been with us from the beginning, that one started around, when was that? July, August, something like that?
August.
Yeah.
Yep. Around their IPO.
What a wild ride that was. Holy cow. They went and did their IPO in New York against China's wishes. China came in and said, gave them a big ass whooping, drugged them back home, back to Beijing, kind of gave them a strip search in their data centers and got down deep and dirty with the data. They made it so no one could sign up for the app, and just really got very, very heavy-handed or ham-fisted with it. And now they had IPO'd in New York. China didn't want that. China clearly wanted them to IPO in Hong Kong, and now that's what's happening. And interesting to see that that's a big part of what it was about. And it's interesting to see how Hong Kong market plays such an interesting strategic role in China's plans for its
Tyler. Tyler, just ask if you just on from a company perspective, where would you rather IPO, Hong Kong or in New York?
As a Chinese company?
No, as any company. I mean, company's a company, right? But forget the government from it.
Yeah.
What's in the best interest of the shareholders?
The major investors in this case were Masayoshi-san, who was in the last article. And Masayoshi-san wanted this to happen in New York. And I think Jack Ma, who was also a major shareholder, also wanted this to IPO in New York. And they wanted to IPO in New York because they are Chinese. Well, Jack Ma is Chinese, and he would rather be able to exchange via New York. From what I understand, and maybe Ken or someone else could jump in and highlight, I think you would need some expertise in the Chinese financial systems. But I think Chinese mainlanders want to IPO in New York because it gives them an opportunity to get some money out of China. Maybe Nicholas might know the answer to this. And I think China, part of the reason that China doesn't want their tech companies IPOing in New York anymore and it's essentially forcing them to do it in Hong Kong is because they can control Hong Kong. And Hong Kong has a really interesting middle ground between China and the rest of the world, where East meets West, where it's still sort of relatively friendly to the West, more friendlier than
they have exchange controls, and they hate to see value leak out of the Chinese economy. So they've typically discouraged people taking money out. However, in the case of securities offerings, the reason why they reversed the securities deals that they had previously put on was because they wanted to control the technocracy in China more directly. And when you have foreign investors, you have the protection of the SEC, irrespective of where you come from. You have to abide by their rules. And so they wouldn't want that to happen.
Okay. So I mean, at the end of the day, that's what I think it was about, is they didn't want to see these investors. And remember, we were joking, and this adds kind of credence to our conspiracy theory back in August, which was, why did Didi bolt and run against China's wishes to the New York Stock Exchange? That seemed very peculiar, that a company would do that to the CCP. Well, this was no ordinary company, because the main investor investors are the good old boys, Masayoshi Son at Softbank and Jack Ma from Alibaba. And they already got the Badookie Duke beat out of them when their Ant Financial IPO got scrapped. And now here they are as the main investors in Didi, and they didn't want to see that happen yet again. So they bolted to New York, and here comes the CCP, with a big tennis racket in hand, ready to, tar and feather them. And now has forced them back home to IPO in Hong Kong, and got quite penalized in the process. And like I said, I would love to. Maybe our friend David Chang would actually know a lot about the intricacies of why that. Some interest.
Tyler, I just wanted to give you breaking news.
Yeah.
Prince Andrew has settled his lawsuit.
Oh, really? With the
with that lady.
Yeah.
I forget her name.
Virginia Guffrey.
Yeah. And what is the terms of the settlement? No doubt it's not.
It's confidential.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Tyler, back to the Didi. Has Jack Ma been seen since August?
Great question. No, he's still in lay low mode. Like, incredibly.
Okay.
No, keep in mind, this is a person who used to be.
You mean after the Europe super yacht trip?
Hold on, Cheryl. Keep in mind, he took a cruise in the Mediterranean or whatever over the summer. This used to be one of the most high-profile people in China, and was, a bit of a mega celebrity even as an entrepreneur, as a tech CEO. He was just more than a tech CEO. He's not like, the CEO of Microsoft or Google or even Apple. I mean, he's even much higher profile than that. He's plays like more of an Elon Musk like role of personality in China than those other Google, Microsoft type CEOs. He was very visible, vocal, spoke at every conference, was everywhere.
Well respected. National hero.
Yeah, he was perceived as again, sort of the Elon Musk, because a lot of the entrepreneurs looked up to Uncle Jack as the one who's outspoken, doing it, making shit happen, and was sort of the poster.
He was reminded how he became Jack Ma.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is he inspired a whole lot of future entrepreneurs.
No, I agree with you, but I'm saying the Chinese authorities reminded him that he was only able to be that person because they were backing him, because they'd, king made him.
Yeah. The state versus the entrepreneur, the state,
No, my conjecture is that he was backed all the time by the power of the state. Just like if you get backed by Andreessen or Sequoia, you have your king made by virtue of their investment. I think he forgot that his investor was the state. That's the subtle point I'm trying to make. He is a hero, but that was just a projection, and they reminded him of that.
Now, you know what?
The real boss.
A thought just occurred to me for the first time, which is the Chinese digital currency, which clearly is relevant. Clearly, now it's out, right? The Chinese digital currency is happening. They have
100%.
They've forced, and we've watched that drama unfold since around June or July last year. And now that it's out, clearly the CCP was planning that for at least 1 year. Will you give us that? At least 1 year?
Much longer. They've been in beta for 2 years.
This is my point.
We've heard about it since 2016.
Right. Here's my point.
Something like that.
Well, the Ant Financial Alipay IPO was planned for January of 2021, right? Which was exactly a year ago. So, if China knew more than a year ago that they were going to do the central bank digital currency, then the Alipay IPO is a bit of a problem for them. And indeed, they shut it down. And that was it was not clear why.
You could see the mirror position was DM and Facebook. So anyone who was watching obviously knows that those would become threats to the national currency, and that's why they had to. It wasn't that they had a choice; they had to, and they've been planning it for a very long time.
Right. Well, my point is,
and I think one thing we've talked about a couple times. Okay, go ahead.
It wasn't clear. When the Alipay IPO got shut down, people were scratching their heads like, WTF, what on earth could China be thinking by scrapping one of the biggest IPOs of all time? Well, we know. And we did assume. We thought, you know what, this might be, because they might be perceiving it as a threat to this digital currency that they want to do. And from the, after view here in February of 2022, that guess seems rather correct as of right now. That was potentially a big. They needed to control Alipay to force it to do the digital currency, and they always knew that a year ago. And so, if it went public, it would have made it incredibly much harder to do that.
Yep, 100%, and that you must see the same parallels with Facebook and DM, because which then became Novi or whatever it changed to, which they closed down. It's exactly the same thing. Governments understand that they have two powers: the power of taxation and surveillance, and the ability to imprison and enforce with violence, that monopoly on violence. And they reminded Jack Ma that they have those monopolies, and that he's touching two very valuable things, as is Facebook, connecting billions of people. And if you allow them to enter into the financial system, they become more powerful than the government.
Yeah, can I, Tyler, a couple of times when we brought this issue up with the digital yuan, we've talked about perhaps an even longer game that's being played. And I think it helps to use this lens to understand some of the moves related to the digital yuan. And that is, I don't think their goal is just to create a national currency of the digital yuan. I think, given that they're long-range planners, they want to use the digital yuan to help accelerate the arrival of the yuan as the international currency to displace the dollar.
100%. And we've covered that multiple times as well. And I mean, Nicholas more than and I and others, the writing, the shadows on the wall come more and more into focus, with each coming headline, and all signs.
And bear in mind the ratcheting of these tensions recently with the Chinese and the Russians, as we spoke about yesterday, and their alliances. Part of this also allows for distance in the FATF, and for them to start to say, well, we don't have to abide by your dollar hegemony rules anymore, because people can access their currencies without going through a regulated intermediary. I believe that is their strategy, and it will be executed. And the reason why they banned Bitcoin mining was because, just in the same way as they wanted to shut down Alipay, they're trying to shut down Bitcoin in exactly the same format so that there is no competition for the yuan, which will finance the entire Belt and Road and will commingle with the dollar and change America's power forever.
Yeah, so check this out.
And I think one of the things in a prior discussion that I called out as perhaps a hallmark of, or a tell of where they're headed, is if they ever implement asymmetric exchange rates into and out of the digital yuan, then it becomes very clear exactly where they're going.
They
That
have
too.
a dual currency approach anyway. They've always had that. So they
They
did.
had that with the fiat currency, exactly. We had to do some
Right,
really
but the
crazy.
leverage that they would have with a digital currency to do that and adjust it on a minute by minute basis,
Mhm.
given
They've been
what we're,
practicing for the last decades.
Yeah, that's well. A lot of the trade agreements, and my own company suffered tremendously as a direct result of this. China keeping their currency artificially weak, which that's just been their game since I don't know, since at least the 80s, and that forced a lot of the U.S. to essentially beg them to stop doing that because it caused a lot of offshoring of manufacturing. And the U.S. would go to China and say, "Hey, please stop doing this, please." And China would say, "Okay, we'll stop doing that if you remove the blockade on China sending garments, textile goods, they're called, to the U.S." And the U.S. said, "Okay, if we allow you to send textile goods, garments, clothes to the U.S., then you'll fix the exchange rate." "Yes, we will." "Okay, great." They shook hands. That was 2002. I had a clothing company at the time. My manufacturing was done in downtown Los Angeles by a very large team of Thais, a Thai family who I ate lunch with every day, and is the reason I ended up in Thailand. Long story short. Anyway, when that deal dried, when the ink on that deal dried, the Chinese factories went into overdrive and started producing all clothes, and this enabled the huge boom of cheap clothes that everyone is now accustomed to. But that absolutely decimated clothing production in the U.S. overnight. Oh, let me tell you my own personal story on this case. The clothing companies, like myself and my friends, would go to the clothing shows, fashion shows, the biggest of which at that time in 2002, 2003 was the Magic Show in Las Vegas, where you would have every buyer, in the universe comes to buy, for the season. You have a booth, and we do it every 6 months. And then after that deal happened, there was a new attendee at this event, which was these very interesting looking Chinese gentlemen in really ill-fitting suits who would come into your booth and say, "How much do you pay to produce each of these items?" And you would say, "Well, I pay $5, $10, $15 for these items." And they say, "Well, I can make it for 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents. And to a clothing company, that means your cost of production per unit is now 10% of what it used to be. That means you are now making $10 per unit, and you're doing sales to Nordstrom's of 5,000 units, 10,000 units. Times $10. I'm making 100,000 extra dollars per sale. So there was champagne popping that day at the Magic Show between me and all my friends at this newfound ability to produce things for a tenth of the price. However, that was very short-lived because 30 minutes later, the buyers from Urban Outfitters and Forever 21 and American Eagle Outfitters and you name all came into your booth and said, wait a minute, your prices are wrong. And you say, "What do you mean? These are the same prices I had the last season and the season before that and the season before that." They said, "Yeah, but you can produce in China now. So we're not going to pay you those regular prices. You can produce this stuff for 1/10 the price, so we're going to pay you 1/10 the price." So what happened was the clothing companies were absolutely forced to produce in China or shut down. Period. Because the buyers were no longer interested in buying at the cost of producing in the US. You had to produce in China. I was faced with that conundrum myself. My Thai production team, because they produce for other designers other than myself, all the other designers decided to go to China or shut down. My Thai production team decided to go back to Thailand. Hence, now I'm in Thailand. So they invited me to join them, and that was an offer I couldn't refuse.
Tyler, what area have you not worked in? Like literally, you've been everywhere. What have you not worked in? Where have you not had a business?
I juggle a lot of balls, yeah. But the point is that whole deal went down, and downtown Los Angeles garment district was gutted, decimated, turned into a tumbleweed ghost town overnight because of that deal, which paved the way for what downtown LA is today, which it has been rejiggered as a hip.
It's still a disaster zone.
Yeah. So anyway, that deal was because of China's trade currency manipulation.
Tyler, I think there's some very, very interesting points that your story demonstrates, and that, if I might just comment on it. One is that economic incentives really do work. So the obviousness of the economic incentive to switch was clear in the beginning. The unknown was that this was subsidized by the Chinese government for particular purposes. B, that procurement officers who are obligated to know the bill of materials or that your costs of production essentially then strip away all of your savings and only leave you with a dictated margin because they're buying in such they have economic economies of scale. So you have to service them and they drive your margin down. And then what I think most people then didn't see as the big, the second big blow, which I hear from my friends who remained in the business, in the shoe business and in the garment business, was that Amazon then basically destroyed all of their margin, and of course the ability to copy so easily and distribute through Amazon has basically slashed away all of the margin in the fashion business to the bone. He says he can't make 5% on net operating margin. If he's lucky, he says it's not worth being in business anymore.
But Nicholas, may I ask a question? Even right now, we know, just like Tyler's story, we know that gonna happen. But if back then, what else can the American do or the American government do? Because it seems inevitable,
But this is exactly what we're going through, right? It's like realizing that there's going to be a race to the bottom in every single business. So much in the same way that music went from being profitable and a good business to be in for the artists and everything else to streaming, and it's now, you get paid nothing in streaming, and they had to go to the live touring business. The businesses augment, but the race to the bottom in almost everything is the big deflationary piece that is technology. Technology is deflationary, and people, migrating through the cycles of maturity is which creates cheap labor. But cheap labor is only part of it, because the government in emerging markets will subsidize because they can use their balance sheet to promote growth. So the only question is the question for the past, is the question for the future, is how are we going to govern ourselves when we realize that this is a zero-sum game, when you have to have people doing jobs or profitably engaging in markets. So this is where you go to globalization versus, I think they call it glocalization, and which industries you choose to protect. That those protections were stripped away by rampant capitalism that will follow the incentives all the way to reducing the marginal costs.
Okay. So, by the way, on the
just quickly, Tyler, on the BB's point.
Hold on.
Yeah.
The biggest point to make here is that in the same way that we now can take a little bit of credit for correctly predicting that this Alipay and financial IPO was cut and kneecapped to enable the central bank digital currency because they knew that they were going to need to leverage that app to popularize, for lack of a better word, the central bank digital currency, which they've now done. And some of us guessed that was potentially why they were doing that. That was a kind of a wild guess at the time. It turned out to be rather correct. It seems to be correct as of right now in middle of February 2022. At the same time, we're making similar guesses about this central bank digital currency's even bigger role through the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, and what and the role that it will play against the dollar hegemony, as Nicholas likes to refer to it. And we're making similar guesses now because all signs are pointing in that direction. And with every new headline every week, there's a new headline that helps us add more fidelity to the evolving or developing picture. For those who remember what a Polaroid camera is, and higher bit rate. We're getting higher bit rate data with every new headline, and it helps put the puzzle together. And every new headline continues to affirm the guess that that's really what's going on here. And I can't wait to see what the next headline is around
Well, the sad part of it is it's a slow motion train wreck
right,
because
precisely.
we can all see what's going on, and there's no way to bring the vast majority of people to consciousness because they don't have the time or interest to care. So that's really the big thing, is that if we can see this is what's going to go on, what are we going to do about the future of democracy and liberalism with a small L, or freedoms?
Sorry, Karam, you're
Taylor.
Yeah, I just wanted to actually say what the BB was saying, that what US could do. I mean, we have to look at it. I mean, everybody's talking about the geopolitics, but we are living in the world which is geoeconomics. And at that time, obviously, US could have actually put tariffs on it. And the tariff, that's what the countries do. But the US couldn't do it because it was a free trade agreement. And you didn't have to actually get into the free trade agreement at that point in time, but that was the sort of incentive was given to China to stay away from the regional situation and not to actually meddle with the geopolitical situation was happening, because it was Cold War, and Afghan war was going on, and then another Afghan war was going on. And if the China would have meddled with it, which it is doing right now, if you look at the current scenario, the last conversation the Putin and President Xi had, he simply said, I mean, if you're going to get the sanctions and embargo on you, then $120 billion, which is exceeding every year to $20 to $30 billion in bilateral trade, just between China and Russia, we're going to actually support that, and we can do that in our mutual currencies. So those kind of scenarios, China actually kind of stayed away from meddling in the geopolitical front. And that was, I think, the heavy price paid, US paid, to actually keep China away. And that goes back to the Kissinger, when this channel was open through the back channel diplomacy. And that was ultimately was given something. And the Taiwan situation was that US actually said, okay, we don't recognize Taiwan, and China has become the China, not the Taiwan China. So those kind of political maneuverability actually impacts the decisions you're going to make economically. So the answer is that yes, US could have actually put the, on certain tariffs on it, and that would have been resolved within a decade or so. But over the time, US had to actually take it back and just carry on with and feel the blunt of it. So because it enjoyed the single, power in the whole world. So yeah, that's what the
Can we
point I
go
wanted
to
to
the
make.
next one? Reuters.
And then a quick about Jack Ma. Last month on January 10th, actually he went to Hainan. So it seems that he right now he made a little bit with the government. Okay, that's it.
Well, yeah, BB, perhaps you could add a little cultural context to that, which is one
Oh,
of
because there was news about
no, BB,
oh, sorry.
that
Should I continue?
for those who aren't aware, one of the large um, initiatives that China has is bringing more attention to Hainan Island to develop. They have a lot of interest in developing Hainan, and they want it especially specifically for tech and innovation. So the fact that Jack Ma's vacationing there might be part of his role in now supporting the government.
Yeah. slowly maybe we can see he supports the digital yuan's news as well. But before this trip to Hainan, of course, Hainan is a special district, a little bit like the Hong Kong, but of course not the same as Hong Kong. So Jack Ma, prior to this news, there was an official who was in a scandal about the corruption. So it was said he is a close friend of Jack Ma. So and actually it's through Jack Ma's company. So originally people suspect Jack Ma would uh, be get involved to this scandal as well. But until this news, just as I said, the January 10th, they reported he went to Hainan for his charity foundation there for the ruler project there. So yeah, so that's why
I think
suspect that right now he, after such big, huge donations and keep low for such a loan buyer to make a little bit with the government at CCP.
I heard that Elon's going to be holidaying in Xinjiang.
Oh,
Can put the virtual
ouch,
idol there.
ouch, 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 ouch. Ouch. So, oh man.
Thought you'd like that one.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah, this time they have this virtual influencer in the Olympics to do those propaganda. So yeah, maybe Elon can have one to do that.
So a key EU lawmaker, which is steering negotiations over the Digital Services Act, and this is a big deal for big tech in the U.S., says she is optimistic that we can make a deal before the end of June. This is being reported by Reuters. And Reuters, why are you road blocking that article? That seems anyway. So yeah, big tech is not at all happy. In fact, they're furious secretly about this new digital act that the EU has. That will keep. It's kind of like going to force. Facebook notoriously said, if you do this, we're going to back out of Europe. To which Europe said, well, holy shit, why didn't we think of this earlier?
You've got to look at it in the same vein as the China thing. The Europeans have woken up and found out that they don't have a technology industry in the age of technology. There are very few companies in Europe that have the international reach that the American technology complex has, and the Chinese have shown how you build your own by protecting your own and telling everyone what to do and putting all the money in and funding it directly through the government balance sheet and getting their technology spread to the people. So the Europeans are really just waking up to the fact that they have to take action, and then they have to look like they're taking action in a way that is not aggressively against their major ally, the USA, because obviously they don't want to be seen to being, unfriendly. So they're doing it, in a classical European way.
But Nicholas, can I just comment? Although it's U.S. company, Delaware C Corp, but many of the founders are very big companies like Stripe and Spotify. They are from Europe, right? Europe, UK.
They don't care. The money is
Yeah, of
predominantly
course.
from the same Keiretsu of VCs, and then on the public markets, it's traded in the USA, and the vast majority of the holders
Right.
are in the US.
Okay, so the next big topic we can jump into is New Zealand-based Soul Machines, which uses AIs to create customer-facing avatars for business. So here comes Ronald McDonald in the metaverse, and on your laptop screen, here comes the deep fakes of Ronald McDonald and Burger King and Wendy's and every other corporate entity you can think of. And so they've raised $70 million by SoftBank. Soul Machines, New Zealand-based company that uses CGI, computer graphics, AI, and natural language processing to create life-like digital people who can interact with customers. So the chatbot is becoming a full-on digitized...
The chat bro.
Yes. And there's an example here named Ruth. The digital cookie coach created by Soul Machines for Nestle Toll House cookies. And so Ruth, the digital cookie coach, can coach you through the process of making Nestle Toll House chocolate chip cookies. What could be better? You just go to their website and you've got this bot who acts like a live person who's trained to teach you how to cook cookies. The startup has worked with brands like Nestle and powered the cookie coach and can answer basic questions about baking cookies and help customers find recipes based on what they have in their kitchen. Soul Machines also teamed up with the World Health Organization to create Florence, a virtual health worker who's available 24/7 to provide digital counseling services to those trying to quit tobacco and learn more about COVID-19. There's also Viola, who lives on the company's website as an example of a digital assistant who can answer questions and interact with content like YouTube videos or maps that she pulls up. Quote, Soul Machine's digital people solution has been particularly well received in the service industries where corporates are looking to enhance their online customer service experience beyond a text-based chat or audio-only call that typically have long wait times to talk to a live person. So this is the new, what do we call it? Call center agent.
Tyler, this could be really important for mental health issues because there's too few specialists in that space. So this could maybe could be opening up a new opportunity for people.
Jay, you unmuted. Calling Jay from Grab. I'll mute you, Jay. There you go. Thank you. Was that BB or somebody was jumping in?
Because there was some noise, so I thought this was you.
Thank you. Yeah, but it's an interesting twist on talking to phone trees where you used to say, press 9 for this and all that jazz. Hopefully it'll put an end to that nonsense finally. Holy shit. Somebody figured out how to kill those terrible phone trees that everyone...
oh God, please do that. Please do that.
That would be
Did you hear the story behind that? Did you hear the story? It was a guy out of Florida that came up with that idea of the I forgot what they call those types of phone numbers, but where they just use like a random set of numbers because they're infinite just to dial out and call people. This guy is in Florida's fault.
I love the idea that the pitch for this startup is we figured out how to solve the phone tree automation systems by making these digital deepfake avatars. So you can now have Snoop Dogg walk you through, how to reset their password on your Belkin server or whatever.
Yeah, but Tyler, they're still, they're just more advanced phone trees. I've worked on those chat bots. So again, a lot of people, everybody thinks everything is AI now and they're calling everything AI. These are just, again, they're a set of programmed questions and answers, and they're getting, better and better at it because they're working on them and defining the questions, but they're not, it's not like talking to a real person, and they're actually very immature is what I would say. Still
Yeah,
very
you
big.
have to have a UX. Yeah, you have to have a really good user experience person who can, and data analyst who could go down because that's another one of the product that I support. But yeah, you have to have someone that goes through, that knows the problem, can take you down the rabbit hole of all the potential questions and anything that could be asked. My friend Annika, she actually builds these. So it's not true AI like Jennifer was saying, like what people think. It's just machine learning in a database and just a host of whatever the infinite amount of questions that could even possibly ask and whatever the answer could possibly be. So that's like another like misconception about AI versus AGI, which is the cognitive learning piece.
Okay.
And Tyler, on Snoop Dogg, on a lighter, different note, yesterday he showed up on Clubhouse responding to the hashtag Snoop in the club. Uh, some of the people, Will Weinbach, he stayed in that room for 14 hours saying he's not leaving until Snoop shows up. And I was there too. And he finally showed up. We all tweeted Snoop in the club. And he was on Clubhouse yesterday, briefly.
I saw when the room started. The name of the room was "I'm not leaving until Snoop Dogg joins the room." Yeah.
Yeah, that's the room. That was Will.
Iram, you have way too much time on your hands.
Are you
Too
still
much better to do.
there?
And how did he know about it so that he
He just
came
told you
and
because the people in the
We
room
tweeted
tweeted out a hashtag.
hashtag Snoop in the club all of us tweeted. 8,000 people, I think, tweeted. I wasn't there the whole time, but since I was on the stage, you could leave and stuff. So 14 hours, people were there taking turns. And finally, he showed up yesterday because, his account is here. He had millions of followers, and he, I think, announced his NFT as well.
Okay.
Wow.
Next story. LinkedIn profiles show TikTok has hired over 190 European content moderators from Accenture and others since January 2021, so a year ago, as its European business explodes for TikTok. And now they've got content moderators for Europe specifically.
Good.
Yeah. Interesting development going on there. Interesting that Accenture and others, I can guarantee you one of the others is my friends Bryce and Jasper at TaskUs. And that's a huge business, all of this artificial intelligence, which are humans in the background doing what people assume are machines. They're not. And we read a crazy article yesterday about, remind me, was it Kenya or Nigeria?
Nigeria, the Sama, right?
Sama, who also does content moderation, but
It was Kenya, actually.
it was Kenya,
Okay.
Mabwana, and and it was Mabwana was familiar, and so was Francine, about the origins of the company, and now they're doing content moderation, and it's ruling, work where people are apparently having post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of being exposed to all of this very toxic content. And now TikTok has hired over 190 European content creators from Accenture, and Accenture is one of the big players doing it for Facebook to the tune of $1 billion a year. And it's huge business. So the next one is from Variety, which is a Hollywood publication, and it says, according to court documents, Meta agrees to pay $90 million in damages to settle a cookie privacy lawsuit that was originally filed back in 2012. And the next one says that the company Nextdoor unveils a redesign to improve search and navigation, expand profile pages. Who cares? And TSMC, Nikkei Japan says they have sources that TSMC's first U.S. chip plant is 3 to 6 months behind schedule due to labor shortages and difficulty obtaining licenses. Instagram will let users send a private like in response to a story, expanding on DMs or emoji reactions. So you can now send private likes to stories on Instagram. Okay. And other big stories before we jump into the tweets. Let me just make sure. The White House says that more than 10 million households have enrolled in the Affordable Connectivity Program, funded by the bipartisan infrastructure bill for broadband discounts. That's great. The New York Times.
Tyler, I have one.
Yes, hold on. We're going to go into those in 2 seconds. I think I have one or two more. The New York Times is doing a profile on Peter Thiel, who plans to leave Meta's board to focus on politics. Yeah, well, that would make sense. If you're going to focus on politics, Facebook has its hands full already. They're being accused by both sides of the aisle that they're favoring their opponents. So if Peter's going to focus on politics, it would be best that he step down from his role on the board there. And Peter will focus on politics and funding far-right MAGA candidates who peddle conspiracies and deny that Biden won. Okay, so the New York Times is doing a
hatchet job.
A hatchet job on Peter Thiel,
but not totally inaccurate, to be fair.
Yeah.
But he can also try to keep himself out of the legal proceedings that are going to go on. That's the other part of it. If you're part of the system.
Yeah.
I sent in the Twitter feed a story about Remington.
Okay, we're going to get to the tweets in 2 seconds. Let me just see if there's another one left. The SEC finds crypto lending company BlockFi $100 million, which will register its high-yield crypto savings product and offer its security as part of the settlement. Texas sues Facebook over its use of facial recognition. From 2010 till last year in Texas, sources say Texas seeks hundreds of billions of dollars in penalties. Now that's how you do it. If you are a state or a city or a country and you need a few nickels to rub together, you just find yourself one of the world's biggest companies, and you find the bejesus out of them.
So what exactly what are they fining for specifically? Like, is it illegal to use it in Texas? Is it an intrusion of privacy?
Yeah, exactly that. The lawsuit filed
Okay.
in Texas seeks civil penalties of hundreds of billions of dollars. In a statement, the Attorney General, Ken Paxton, said that Facebook's capture of facial geometry in photographs that users uploaded is in violation of Texas law. Quote.
So just now, Ken actually
Funny
read
part is
the
Google
article.
uses it too.
So there was a question if Clearview is also fine in Texas.
If you have
Clearview is
any
used at the
money,
airports, and that has to do with TSA. So, I mean, Clear is used with the TSA, and that's federal, so they're not going to go after them. However, with Facebook, that means are they going to go after Google and all the other ones that use your images and stuff for different things? And I can tell you for a fact, I know the city of Houston uses facial recognition along with a couple of other ones.
here's
And
the
how about
quote.
ID.me?
Facebook has secretly been
That's
harvesting
federal.
Texans' most personal information, their photos and videos, for its own corporate profit. Texas law has prohibited such harvesting without informed consent for over 20 years. While ordinary Texans have been using Facebook to innocently share photos of loved ones with friends and family, we now know that Facebook has been brazenly ignoring Texas laws for over a decade.
Hey, Tyler, two
Yeah,
things. This is
yeah.
Robert.
Hey, Robert.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Number one, it's very interesting, again, Peter Thiel's exit, especially on stuff like this that's coming. Number two, the size of the award that they're pursuing is pretty big. You said hundreds of billions of dollars, not a couple of billion, hundreds of billions of
Right.
dollars. And like you said, this could open the path to the money train for size and scope of lawsuits at this level too.
Yes, that makes more sense because I don't foresee them winning. They'll probably they probably get a fine, but not that much. They're asking for too much, most definitely.
But Ben said because the law is different from state to state, so he said Texas and Virginia. I forgot the other state he mentioned. So he said because of the laws, so they can sue Meta with this.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, every other
Illinois.
state will follow it.
Yeah, if you're a state and you have laws on the books that they have fallen afoul of, why wouldn't you penalize them in similar ways? Like every state's going to be watching this.
I wonder if this is going
It's
to
just a
open up
revenue
to
generating
the
scheme.
Yeah.
citizens suing the state for using it, for doing the facial recognition thing.
And also Ken also mentioned it could be politically motivated because the Texas guy is running, right?
Okay, so there's a couple of new at least one new one that's come in. And from Bloomberg, after India banned Free Fire game, a Singapore-based company lost $16 billion. The Singapore-based company lost $16 billion in value, its largest ever drop. So an Indian company lost $16 billion in value because a Singapore-based company lost that because India banned it. And
this was also related to the top news that 53 China apps, game apps were banned as well. So this is creating another possibility for new unicorns.
Right. Okay, so now we get into the tweets. Did anyone have a tweet they want to make sure that we get to today?
I sent it was actually a story about Remington settling with Sandy Hook on the, I don't know if you saw that.
No. What happened?
Hold on. Yeah, so Remington settled with, they'd filed bankruptcy for bankruptcy protection because the victims of the Sandy Hook massacre had essentially taken action against them, and they settled. And I was really wanting to look at the implications of, and whether people saw the implications if the gun company is being held liable for the death of the people at Sandy Hook because the perpetrator used their gun. I wondered what that would look like if it was extrapolated to the technologies that we're using, where Facebook, where people are cutting themselves, or if they're, doing all of these things to themselves, which would have a similar precedent. And I wondered if anyone had any thoughts about that.
I feel as though that is a slippery slope, because are you going to blame causing accident that harms people? So it's not, I mean, probably, if anything, there could be a case for the power of the weapon that's being used, because we're not living in the day and age like the 17 and 1800s and stuff like that, where, they had a musket or a one-shot thing. We have high power weapons, and it's not really necessary in the climate that we live in. So, I mean, we have to get to a point where it's about the individual and accountability, and look at the systems that failed these people, like the health, like mental health is not put in the forefront, or having protocols in place to try to catch these people before something big happens. That's where we should be looking, and not at the gun manufacturers. I mean, they're a small piece, but not the major piece.
So, does it create a precedence? That was a question. And I would say, if this thing carries, it'll create a hell of a precedence beyond guns. The question is,
Yep.
where would it spread to? And the other thing is, I know in the 90s, when the U.S. had a lot of issues with urban violence, there was violence other places too, but urban violence in the late 80s and 90s, a number of cities were trying to sue gun makers too. And those cases didn't carry, because I remember Chicago had tried to sue them, and it didn't work. So it'll be very interesting. This would be a very good Supreme Court case if it ever makes it up to that
Well,
level.
you know why? I mean, I'm not to get into that, but nobody really cares what happens in urban neighborhoods and in the hoods when it comes to gun violence. It's like, it is what it is, and that's it. But in this case, because it was something that everybody can feel and they can relate to, then of course, they're going to try to the best of their ability to do something about this. But it is going to set an unhealthy precedent, because people are already going back and forth with Instagram and Facebook about some of the things that people post, and we're still not talking about the accountability of the individual. I think someone said last week you should, no, it was yesterday, I think, about having some type of social responsibility and doing like a bounty thing. When you see people posting things, report it, especially once it's reviewed. I think that's a great idea. People need to be more accountable before, because I mean, law and suing companies is not the way to do it. We have to take responsibility as people.
But the court has held. Sorry, I got somehow booted out of the room. I don't know if it was too sensitive a subject. The court has held them, Remington, liable, in the court documents, according to the article. So this precedent seems to have been set. And I agree with you, Al. I think incentivizing and bounty, creating costs and externalities in the incentives is the right way to do it in social. But I just wondered, this seems that if Remington is liable, then so would be a social media company that is affecting the mental health of teenagers, etc.
I have a question. Are they really accepting guilt at all, or is it just settlement? If anyone knows.
Great question,
What do
because
you mean,
usually
guilt?
in settlements nobody accepts guilt. So that's a great question.
Yeah, when they settle, that means it's like through arbitration, and they can't take any more. They can't pursue it any further after they've settled, and and then that's that, and they can't talk about it. They can't go against the company and any other stuff. But this is going to set an unhealthy precedent for future things to come.
Yeah, but to me is like, okay, if you are settling, yes, they cannot talk about it, but in a sense, they are accepting the fact that something wrong has been done with whatever something they are making. I mean, I was just wondering when I asked the question if they actually
It's
said
interesting.
sorry or
It's
something, but
interesting.
this is, yeah. Oh.
It's interesting because I'll read you it to you because it is difficult to understand. It says Sandy Hook families reach historic settlement with gunmaker Remington. The settlement with the maker of the rifle used in the 2012 elementary school massacre marks the first time a gun manufacturer has been held liable in a U.S. mass shooting. So there's two sort of contradictory statements. There's a settlement, which we're not privy to the details of, but the manufacturer has been held liable. And that is what I think is interesting. It says the settlement comes after a protracted legal battle over how the gunmaker marketed its firearm. The dollar amount of the settlement was not immediately known. It is the first time a gun manufacturer has been held liable for a mass shooting in the United States. Strange, right?
Yeah, absolutely. To me, it's like if a big company is paying out cash, in a sense, they are saying, okay, for whatever it is that they're done, even if they're not saying we're sorry, they're accepting like some kind of guilt, and they're compensating people for that. That I'm just
As regular
thinking.
people, yeah, that's exactly how you should think. But it's more like they're saying, we're sorry for your loss. It's really messed up. However, it was not our gun's fault, but because we feel bad, here you go. You know, we feel bad on that level. But they're not admitting fault. There's a difference between admitting fault and feeling bad. They feel bad about the situation, but they're not admitting fault.
Sometimes corporate settlements or these settlements are just to get it off the books. Take McDonald's when the older woman or elderly woman had coffee spill in her hot coffee spill in her lap. Really wasn't McDonald's fault. Their temperature of the coffee is where the temperature of coffee was, or it has always been. It's just where this person placed it, what they were doing. But instead of fighting it and looking like a bully, they're like, let's just get it off the books. So it isn't always one of those things where I admit that I'm wrong. Sometimes it's just better just to get it off the books.
Yeah, because you can't have it carry over if they're trying to sell or something like that. They can't have that stuff carry over into the next like calendar year.
Well, they filed for bankruptcy protection. So in this case, it seems that they've been held liable, and it was with regard to the marketing of the gun, which was much more like an M16 and high-powered assault rifle that really drew the child into being attracted to it. So there's something. It's something that I think anyone who has got deeper knowledge would be very interesting if they could come back and tell us what
And
was
not
going
to
on.
mention the NRA, you see, the NRA has taken a quiet seat, so that's probably another reason why they were able to get this through. Because I think the NRA has their own problems right now.
Right, and like you brought up, Remington was almost has tried to file bankruptcy several times. They've also tried to get sold. Nobody wants to touch them. Also, because the number of rifles have drastically gone down in price because there are just better manufacturers that are out there. I mean, their biggest one is called an M700, which is a hunting rifle. And the other biggest problem is most people don't know the difference between an M4, an AR-15, or an AR-16. They're technically three different platforms, but because it looks the same, they all call it the same. And because when you watch people that play Call of Duty a lot, you'll realize this because they'll always like Sig Sauer came out with this M17 and M18 platform. They'll always call it an M19 because it looks similar to what the video games are. But nobody ever brings up that the video games as to what attracts them, and is also a lot of people have a hard time differentiating what's real and what's not when you're sitting behind a computer all day. And that was always my biggest issue. And just to be transparent, I am a firearms instructor. I am an armorer and everything else. So I do have a lot deeper knowledge than other people.
That's super interesting. But to go back to the root point is that if the gun manufacturer is in fact liable for the actions of the user, does that extrapolate to technology? And as this is technology around the world, I think that is an interesting precedent. that the tool that you use can be liable for the outcomes. It's a very
and,
interesting thought.
yeah, exactly, and how you market, or how the interpretation of how you market the tool, because you may have good intentions, but how they're viewing how you're marketing the tool a certain way that causes, let's just say, issues.
And that's
The
what they were held
liability,
liable
because
for, the marketing of the tool that was appealing to someone who wasn't
exactly.
capable of understanding how to use the tool.
Yeah,
Right.
but if you have a parent that's a gun enthusiast, which is what I do, if you have somebody that's a gun enthusiast, and there's nothing wrong with being, passionate about things, but if you have someone that is, you have a role model or whoever in your life that is not the best one when it comes to the relationship you have with weapons, the respect that you should have for it, then that is actually, to me, that's more of a problem than the commercial marketing, because your first lessons come from home. And if you're not having those lessons at home, and you have a parent that has, that owns guns, then, I feel as though they should even be held liable. You need to work on that. I mean, if
So
you're
the
going to go after them,
parents,
you got to go parents.
the parents should be sentenced if their child becomes a school shooter. That's a very interesting thought.
That's where they're going towards, because, I mean, what were you doing?
Well, as a kind of related point, as Cheryl knows, in Japanese culture, if somebody commits suicide, the family has to pay for the
Yeah,
inconveniences.
If you read the
if they
book
jump
Far
the train track, they have to pay millions.
Yeah,
if you
and I'm a
if you
parent, speaking as a parent, just so y'all know, so I'm not just talking out my ass.
if you read the book Far from the Tree, it's about one of the mass shooters and how far he fell from the morals and principles of his parents to as a counter narrative to holding the parents completely responsible. So when clearly there's evidence that they've aided and abetted aggressive behavior, I agree, but that's not always the case.
Okay, let's get into
And Klevak, one of the shooters in Columbine, I've actually had long conversations with his mom, and she has suffered immensely from the backlash of her son being a shooter, when in fact there is no one on this planet who is less likely to raise a shooter.
interesting.
Yeah, it's not that you're raising a shooter. It's just being that active parent, if possible, if you can. But if you have some, like, if you know that you have weapons in your house, because I've sadly had to deal with some things working with public safety, that I end up having these certain projects is because something happened where we had a parent whose son or youngest daughter took a gun to school and ended up shooting another kid because he saw his dad, had these guns in the home, and dad has them too. But dad never had that talk with the child about guns and how dangerous they are, and you need to respect them as well, not
Well,
just don't
I
touch.
completely, I completely,
undoubtedly,
just to be clear, I completely agree. So I want to be very clear. I think parents have a huge accountability to shut down bullying behavior in their children, to shut down aggressive behavior in their children, not to have weapons accessible in the house. All of that, 100% agree. I'm just saying, let's be careful not to blanket indict every parent of every shooter, because
Oh yeah, of course not, of
yeah,
course
that's
not.
all.
Yeah,
That's
of
all I'm
course
saying.
not. That's like
That's all
not
I'm saying.
blaming all the companies, because that's what precedent
Right, right.
does.
That's
well,
all I'm saying.
I'm creating a child decertification program. So if you have a wayward child that's really crazy, you can decertify them so you won't be legally liable. Okay,
Ah,
just kidding.
there we go. We could get crazy credits too. It's like tax, like green carbon credits. You could get,
Exactly.
you could
I
The
can
earn.
name
see
of the
parents
company is
abusing that.
Black Sheep Certifications.
I can see, but
Oh
I
my
can see
god.
parents. I can see parents abusing that though, because you have some parents who aren't the best as parents. So if you incentivize their kids having problems and them getting some type of reciprocity or kickback for that, that can be an issue as well.
Okay,
Okay, no kids.
next tweet. We were just talking about bots with faces, that, deep fakes that are going to help people, like the Nestle Toll House cookie character who's going to help you bake cookies. And now a related article that Poppy just found is that humans find AI-generated faces more trustworthy than real human faces. Viewers struggle to distinguish images of sophisticated machine-generated faces from actual humans. Yeah, we're getting to that point.
And they've been working on the science of doing this for ages because, of course, you want the friendliest face to interact with, and people react. We have a facial recognition that we run, which is located just above the ear, between the temple and the ear, which enables us as humans to recognize faces. We read faces before we speak, so we have an extremely well-defined sense of this. So using AI, you can easily figure out what are the characteristics that make for a more trustworthy person in terms of eye spacing and all of these types of things.
I have to imagine it'll in some way be based on the individual themselves or their parents or whatever.
Yeah.
The next one is Shumba sent in this one about a new concept lets the Tesla Cybertruck drive on water. A new concept. It's a new design it's an addition that snaps on to a Tesla Cybertruck that will allow it to function as a kind of like a hydrofoil floating above water, kind of an above water hydrofoil boat.
That's just what you want, an electric vehicle on water. Yeah.
What is the name of this product? Jesus, perhaps?
The Jesus mobile.
It's like he's really is a conjurer. It's like every time there's something more and more, magical.
And speaking of magical, the World Economic Forum says that in 5 years, your smartphone might be able to predict your thoughts, translating thoughts into text. From the World Economic Forum. And
I don't think they're going to translate your thoughts. They're going to tell you what to think, and then they're going to tell you that you thought that.
Right. Thomas Tong found the next one that a 7.5.
Tyler, just quickly, can I comment on this one? This is really interesting. Okay, so, we always think on this particular point that somehow, the phone or like some sort of like a physical device needs to be connected, a Neuralink or something like that. And it has to originate from our mind in order to actually some device to read or whatever we are thinking. In fact, what is happening is like if the predictability through our actions gets to a point where we get to like 60-70% of that, which is like a very common living routine we get ourselves into, and our phone knows that exactly. So our bed is connected with our phone, our whatever we are consuming is like phone knows, the way we are moving phone knows, wherever we go, the car we get in, the point we get off, all the calories we consumed, whatever calories we burned. So it's very easy for phone to predict through some sort of like not the mechanism, but the algorithm is to what we're going to be thinking next. So I think if you look at the other way around, I think it's very much possible. I mean, yeah.
This is why the future is quest.
Hold on, go, Carl. You go, and then we'll go to Nicholas.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to say, I think that was, because I'm in space, so I'm sorry, I think that was Karan who was speaking. To clarify that, because I was thinking along the same lines, is that whenever these headlines come out, they use the word thought, but that's actually wrong. It's intent. It's being able to predict intent with an ever-increasing probability. And it's really misleading because, read your thoughts. Well, that's the conscious part of it. That's the bit of what you're thinking about, but it's actually infrequently the decision-making part of it. You're not really intentional about most of the things you do throughout the day. So what this is talking about is that what you actually do, the actual outcome. So it's a very misleading article, and then whenever these come out, it distracts from the main focus of a lot of the companies with their analytics and everything, which is mapping intent and then persuading intent and actually staying completely away from the conscious aspect of it. Because once you start infringing on the conscious aspect of the thoughts, that's something that the person can recognize. and go, whoa, hold on a minute, and freak out about and rally against, etc., etc. But intent is much more insidious and much more incipient and harder to track, and actually much more effective.
Karam, you were saying? Or no, Nicholas, sorry. Okay, moving on. The Thomas Tong found this one, that a 7.5 foot long mushroom canoe demonstrates the powerful versatility of mushrooms, or mycelium. Washington State University student built a 7.5 foot long canoe using mushrooms in order to raise awareness of its versatility. And KC found this one, that British Volt, which I have to assume was inspired by the name Northvolt, is a venture which aims to build the country's, meaning the UK's, first large-scale battery plant, known as a gigafactory, for electric cars, and has secured £200 million of funding, as it needs to do, because these gigafactories, which Tesla famously called them, cost about $400 million to build, as Northvolt cost to build in Sweden. And as British Volt is now close to having gotten to the finish line and raising £200 million, so about $250 million, so they're close to finishing all the fundraising for their gigafactory. Fantastic.
They're moving pretty quickly. They only got approval, I think, 2 or 3 weeks ago from the UK government. Yeah. So and open support for that.
I remember about a month ago. Yeah, but these things do move quickly because the demand is there. So these are very smart investments generally, because there's just overwhelming demand to shift all vehicles over to EVs. Countries themselves are going to mandate. Here's where it gets really clever. This is why the countries themselves want to get involved. Because the UK, for example, can force car makers to only allow shipments in sales of EVs. And the country might even go one step further and say, you must use our batteries produced here in the UK in your UK sold vehicles, which is something that sounds like something that, India might do, for example.
Well, there's a deeper cycle there as well, because if you're,
no pun intended,
like you were,
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Tom.
No, it's just I said no pun intended, because batteries are all about deep cycles. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. But there's also the aspect of, if you're going to be, you're reliant on the batteries. And then if you're reliant on the batteries coming from outside, you're also reliant on the lithium supplies. And those two things are very keenly tied together, and that you don't really want to be reliant on either of them, to be fair. But chiefly, it's about the sourcing of the lithium. So there's a lot of lithium. There was a thing about Cornwall, I think, that was 2-3 days ago, something like that. About potential lithium mining there. So that these things are tied together. You do not want to rely on battery imports, because then you're relying on lithium, and then you could be relying on an entire subsidiary chain of where are those battery supplies getting the lithium from, and that becomes a massive problem. So you want the lithium local, you want the batteries local, and then other things you can import, but those two things specifically.
Okay. The next one is from Thomas Tong, that an engineering student's AI model of image recognition turns American Sign Language into English in real time. So you imagine somebody doing sign language with their hand to their camera on their laptop, and the laptop runs an app that can translate the image into text. So it converts hand sign language into text in real time. Very clever. Awesome. That's very cool.
I think the most impressive thing is it takes American and turn it into English. That's a really big one. Swedish joke for those who doesn't understand that.
Yeah. Then the next, that's a little taste of Swedish humor for you, everybody. So Thomas found the next one, that a $4 desalinization system provides continuous clean drinking water for a family for the grand total of $4. So you could take control of your own water supply, something you need every 3 days. You die without water in 3 days.
Could you tag that post in the top of the room? Because that was really, I've been working with desalination and water treatment plants. That's really remarkable.
I just retweeted it to the Tech News Twitter account. It's Thomas Tong's tweet.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the most recent tweet in the TNATW account. And it shows the devices and how it's designed, and a grand total of $4. And it produces enough water for a family to drink water. So now you have no excuse when your water system goes out. You know that government you live under, that mismanaged COVID? Yes, they're of course they would never mismanage your water supply. No, never at all. And by the way, it's now digitized, and there's no way anyone would ever hack it. That's just inconceivable. That could never happen.
Where was the place in the US? There was an entire county or state or district or something without water.
Right here in Austin, Texas, baby. For 4 days, they had a boil water notice because they didn't recharge the aquifer correctly after a shutdown.
But that stuff never happens. There you go.
That never. But also Flint, Michigan, which is still an issue.
No, guys, what are you doing? This stuff never happens. Water is always there. It will always be there. Go back to sleep. Don't bother getting your own water supply. You'll regret it. It's a waste of time. You'll really, really, really hate having your own control of your own water supply. It's just you're going to hate yourself.
I am drowning in your sarcasm.
So I'll drink to that. So the next one is that Virgin Galactic plans to open ticket sales to the public for flights to the edge of space. Tickets will run customers $450,000. In order to secure a seat, people must pay a $150,000 deposit and then pay the remaining $300,000 before the flight. There you go. Next is from Jason, who joins us in Twitter Space. It's a device. It's a camera that allows blind to experience photos and videos for the first time. The camera creates 3D recreations of photos and videos. So you hold up the camera, somebody can, I don't know, do a TikTok dance in front of the camera. The TikTok dance is then translated into a 3D, like, do you remember those pins where you push your hand into the pins and then you get this, 3D representation of your hand pushing on this bed?
The 80s.
Right. So imagine a moving 3D version of that. A moving version of that, an animated version of that, where whatever the camera can use those pins to replicate whatever the camera is seeing in real time, and then the blind person can feel with their hand, oh, it looks like somebody who's twerking. So now blind people can see what twerking looks like with their hands by one of these pin cameras. Very clever. So
is this going to move? Because that's the whole point of twerking, right? Yeah. I'm looking at the picture now, so it's going to move. Okay.
Yeah, it's animated. Yeah. Earth-like planet has been spotted orbiting the nearest star. Shifts in starlight from Proxima Centauri, which is the closest star after the sun, reveals its third planet, a world orbiting within a star's habitable zone. So it's in the range of temperatures based on the size of Proxima Centauri. They can calculate rather accurately the livable zone of the distance that the planet must be within in the range of that star, and they have found that. So there is now a potential replacement for planet Earth around Proxima Centauri.
It's worth reminding that I know space isn't always the top topic in these rooms, but with Jason Webb, getting into final position and setting up, this shit's going to get really cool soon. Very, very cool. We're going to unlock a lot of spectroscopy and measurements that we haven't been able to do before ever. So it's, when we find things like these, use, wobble technique and that sort of thing, the James Webb can then go in and get really detailed views of these and potentially get measurements of atmosphere using occlusion methods and everything else. It's going to get really cool in the next 5 or so years.
Okay, next up is from Evan and many others, Dr. Fran, I think, also, that children's online game platform Roblox is infested with sexual games. The US-founded Roblox, which allows users to create and play their own games, is popular with young children between the ages of 9 and 12. But the Roblox is infiltrated by sexually explicit games featuring strippers, Nazis, and bondage. Welcome to the metaverse. So I just tweeted that one out. Thank you, Evan. The next is from David Crace, also about the metaverse, how the metaverse influenced New York Fashion Week. In virtual and blended fashion shows at New York's Fashion Week, designers have added metaverse elements to the catwalk experience. And BB found this one from the BBC. You did it again, BB. This one is also an opportunity to play our favorite show called Tech News Jeopardy. So here we go. What percent of ransomware? No. Which country earns the most amount of money from ransomware?
Russia.
UAE.
Russia.
UAE.
Ukraine.
China.
No one's guessing.
Belarus or
Wait, is that
Ukraine.
selling it or buying it or?
China?
The
I
answer,
wasn't clear on the question.
to put it in context, 74% of ransomware revenue goes to one particular country and their hackers.
Russia.
Not Israel.
Wait, okay, so that's the added thing because you said ransomware. The revenue goes to them and their hackers. I was thinking of how the money was flowing through. Okay.
So ransomware
Ukraine.
is what is used
Kazakhstan?
to when a company gets hacked and their data gets locked down, and then the hackers say, "Pay our ransom for your data to be returned," and many companies do pay that money. 74% of that money is going to what country?
India.
Russia.
Iran.
Belarus?
So
North Korea.
Ukraine.
if you said Guatemala, you would be wrong. But if you said Russia, go ahead and give yourself an applause.
You see, I screamed Russia 3 times.
First
Russia
too
is
obvious.
Russia.
Bollocks.
I'm back.
Oh my
Messy's
god.
back, everybody.
Messy.
So the next
And
one
suck at it.
is that this is from South China Morning Post, which is a Chinese publication, and a rather good one, I have to say, and I've said many times before. South China Morning Post is from, this one's coming from BB, that China's snake-like space robot designed to move or manipulate big objects in space. The robotic tentacle, according to the South China Morning Post, this robotic tentacle could crush a small satellite like a python strangles its prey, but that China does not plan to use it as a weapon. So the robotic,
You're right.
China's snake-like robot designed to move or manipulate a large object in space, and we would absolutely never, never, never use this as a weapon to crush your satellites. So
Unless Elon stops following their rules.
Why mention it if you're not going to do that?
Yeah, because you don't believe it. But why not U.S. or other countries do the same thing? Because right now there are so many, space trash there. So
Oh,
actually, yeah, please.
Tyler, this is a strategy for Singapore government too. We always tell people what we have, and during the National Day parade, we will show everyone, not because we want to have anything, but just to tell people what we have. And don't get too close.
Okay.
You know, this was a movie in the 80s with Tom Selleck. It was called Runaway. And when y'all brought this up, I couldn't think of it, but it was called Runaway, and there were spider robots in it. And they were used to harm people.
So the next one's from BB from the Wall Street Journal, that Ukraine's use of armed drones could offset some of Russia's enormous military advantage. Turkish weapons employed by Ukraine in fight against separatists now readied in case of a broader war with Russia. So Ukraine's
Tyler, did you see the link I did post about the American initiative for a massive drone attack? They called it the 1,000-mile drone or something like that. I sent it in the back channel on Twitter to you.
Okay.
And I said, bloody Tyler, your predictions.
Yeah.
So the drone point is quite interesting actually, because I mean, drones aren't really going to play much of a, if Russia invades, it's going to be conventional war. But the drone point is quite interesting because of who Ukraine has been getting its drones from, and the most notable of this, aside from like a few NATO states, is Turkey. Turkey's President Erdogan has been really like trying to offset the devastating decline in the economy essentially through arms sales, and one of the biggest buyers in recent months has actually been Ukraine and the Ukrainian government. And what's interesting about this is just that the Turkish and the Russians have a very similar set of goals in terms of they're both powers that are run by strongmen. They're both authoritarian. They're both countries that seek to reestablish themselves, from a past that has been affected, particularly in the 20th century. And they once were very close, but that all changed after 2015 when a Russian jet was shot down in Syria by Turkey. And now the two countries have what some have coined like a cooperative competition. So I think that arms sale point is really interesting, because I think Turkey's got, ambitions to just sort of destabilize as much as Russia does. And if they want to get involved in Ukraine, that could add another element to this whole conflict. But,
And Turkey's drones, says Robert, Turkey's drones were used highly effectively in the Armenian-Azerbaijan conflict not long ago. So they're getting pretty good practice not only there but in Syria. So expect them to export those more often than not.
yeah, well, that's the point. The Nagorno-Karabakh conflict is really interesting as well, because obviously Armenia and Russia are very close, but Azerbaijan and Turkey are very close. I can't remember exactly the quote. It was sort of two states, one unity, or something like that. But basically, Azerbaijan is so close with Turkey now that they sort of, I think it was Erdogan who said they're basically one state at this point. And Russia has become the de facto, much like they did in Kazakhstan with that peacekeeping force. They've become the sort of peacekeeping force in that region and conflict as well. So you've got these weird theaters of conflict and tension where Russia and Turkey keep cropping up as the de facto sort of, proxy powers. So their relationship is only going to continue to spill over in Northeast Africa, with Turkey selling so many drones to the Ethiopian government, and Russia's interest in Northeast Africa as well. So it's really interesting that. But anyway, sorry for going on.
And Piotr, there's another point I think like we didn't discuss, like on the Turkish Russian angle. Recently what happened, I mean, the Christian Orthodox Church, the Armenian one, used to align it with Russia, with Moscow. And there's like a complex situation. So people who actually understand how the church works, the Orthodox church works, they have realigned it back to the Constantinople, like Istanbul church. So there's a religious shift as well. So this is like brings in very interesting angle to this whole equation, because Putin wanted to have that sort of like control over the religious side also, but now it's been shifted back. The Armenians are shifted back to the Turkish church. So that's where this angle of actually both of them sort of aligning themselves, that also comes into the picture.
Yeah, and the quote I was trying to think of is Azerbaijan and Turkey. It's one nation, two states, which basically refers to this incredibly close cultural ties the two countries have had through the Ottoman Empire and things like that. But the functioning states obviously are different. But yeah, I mean, this is why I think autocratic states generally have a limitation in terms of how closely they can cooperate. You know, we're worried about the Russian-Chinese relationship, but it just shows you that they just don't have as many common values as democracies do. Democracies have their issues, but they can get around this common set of principles and norms and stuff, which is why I think, you know, we shouldn't be too worried in the future, but that's a different topic. So I'll stop.
We got to move on. We got to move right along here. BB found this one that a nurse speaks out after Apple Watch detects major health change months ahead of a diagnosis. A nurse in Australia realized data from her Apple Watch could have helped her detect a rare thyroid problem many months in advance. Yeah, another reason to potentially get an Apple Watch. The next is from Dr. Fran from Axios about TikTok. Public video of Russia, Ukraine transforms battle theater. Social media has changed the flow of information in these tense situations, and it's not about how social media and specifically TikTok has changed how the public consumes information related to conflicts, international conflicts, particularly wars. And we're going to have the first post-social media wars, y'all. We're going to absorb it through TikTok. And that's going to be interesting to see how that shifts, how the medium as the message, as our friend Marshall McLuhan famously said, how that's going to impact how people perceive war if we're consuming it through TikTok in little 30-second sound bites. So the next, speaking of that, from the New York Times, killer robots aren't science fiction. A push to ban them is growing. A UN conference made little headway this week on limiting development and use of killer robots, prompting stepped-up calls to outlaw such weapons. Good luck with that. The next is that BlockFi, a crypto firm, reaches $100 million settlement for failing to register their loan products. The threat of SEC scrutiny already had scuttled plans by Coinbase, the largest US-based cryptocurrency exchange, to launch a loan product, and now BlockFi, who just went ahead and did it anyways, is now finding out what the fine is for doing that. It turns out it's about $100 million. And then Matt Hughes, who joins us from Twitter quite often and sometimes Clubhouse, found this one.
And 50 million of that is going to be shared by about 34 different states. So they're each getting $934,000 in settlement from BlockFi. So this is, again, on that regulatory taxation perspective. This is how they're making money now. Rightly so in this case.
TikTok can circumvent Apple and Google privacy protections and access a whole lot of data. According to this article, the popular Beijing-based app has carte blanche in gathering users' data, crypto security experts say. Yeah, well, we did a deep dive on that recently about how it collects more data than any other app by far and shares it willy-nilly more than any other app. So the next one is from Jeff G. from Wired. It says, don't get your Valentine an internet-connected sex toy. Mozilla expands its privacy not included gift guide to the bedroom. It's all sexy fun and games until someone hacks a Wi-Fi enabled sex toy. And the next one is from Thomas Tong from the BBC, that pharmaceuticals and rivers threaten world health. Paracetamol, nicotine, caffeine, and epilepsy and diabetic drugs were widely detected in rivers and streams in many, many cities, and this is starting to become a problem. And a related one from Jeff G. about water from CNN, that the west coast of America, meaning California, Oregon, and Washington, the mega drought is already starting again. We had it a year ago. They had a bunch of rain momentarily, and that's now gone. Remember when we used to do Tech News Around the World and we used to talk about a lot of droughts and how bad it was in California? and it seemed like every day there was a new doomsday drought warning. And then the rain came, and that was great. And it was record levels of rain. Oh boy, was it a lot of rain. It's all gone now. So we're back to droughts. And the new study found that the West Coast's 21st century drought is the worst in more than a millennia, more than 1,000 years, 1,200 years. Los Angeles is working to stave off a crisis by recycling 100% of its wastewater. That means your urine and fecal material is going to get recycled and sent back to your house, because it's desperate times require desperate measures, as there's no more water. And we got to recycle the poop, y'all, if we want to keep...
Bill Gates have been waiting for this for a really long time.
You mean recycling sewage water, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we have to do in Singapore. No choice.
Yeah. The FBI warns that Blackbyte ransomware is targeting U.S. critical infrastructure. What? Critical infrastructure? You mean like water, food, and energy? The ransomware gang also encrypted the network of the San Francisco 49ers days after an FBI warning. And I think we all know what that article's about, so we could skip it. Katerina has a really interesting one from The Guardian, that the United States government is deploying the robotic dogs, robo-dogs, at the Mexican border. As if the border isn't surveilled and militarized enough, the Department of Homeland Security wants to go full Black Mirror, according to The Guardian. Well, I grew up on the San Diego-Tijuana border, which I have crossed literally hundreds of times. It's not that monitored on it, to be honest with you. I know many people who have crossed that border illegally, and yeah, I don't know. I think The Guardian, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not a fan of putting robo-dogs on the Mexican border, but better than real dogs, I'll put it that way. But I imagine it is better than real dogs, having robotic. If the option is real dogs or robo-dogs, I think for everybody involved, robo-dogs a better option. So we'll see how that develops. The next one is from Katerina, that Apple is working on 3 new Macs. Regulatory filings show, and Apple may launch them next month in March at their event. We will see. You'll have to stay tuned, and we will find out more when we meet again tomorrow for another Tech News Around the World.
That feels very unlikely next month, but
I agree.
We'll see.
But there is an event next month, but what the hell are they?
Thank you.
We don't know.
And Tyler, I must say something.
Go ahead, Paul.
I missed you so much today when you were away.
Okay.
So many things to do in the background, you know.
Samishina. Okay.
Sabishi. And you're good at it.
Alrighty, thank you. Well, thank you guys for covering while I had a minor emergency here. And
thank you, everybody. Thank you for helping out.
Thank you. You guys are rock stars.
Thank you.